The deep space listening post on Luna hummed with quiet activity as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison checked the overnight signal reports. 3 weeks had passed since Earth established contact with the first alien civilization, and every day brought new surprises from the galaxy beyond their solar system. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his coffee cup when the emergency alert system screamed to life, the main display screen filled with cascading data streams as Dr. Lisa Kane rushed into the control room. Her blonde hair was still messy from sleep, but her green eyes were wide with excitement and concern. She had been Earth's lead xenolinguist for 5 years, ever since the government realized they might actually need people who could talk to aliens someday. "What do we have?" Lisa asked as she slid into her workstation. Her fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, pulling up translation matrices and communication protocols. Jake pointed at the main screen, where wave patterns danced in complex formations. Unknown transmission source, but the signal strength suggests it came from at least 40 light-years away. The pattern structure looks like the Zephyrian communication method we learned about last month. Lisa nodded and began running the signal through her translation software. The Zephyrians were a peaceful race of crystalline beings who had made first contact with Earth through a simple mathematical greeting. They had seemed friendly enough, sharing basic star charts and cultural information. But this transmission felt different. Even without understanding the words yet, Lisa could hear desperation in the signal's urgent repetition. The translation program worked for 20 minutes before. Lisa gasped and stepped back from her console. Her face had gone pale, and her hands shook slightly as she reached for the communication controls. "Jake, we need to wake up Admiral Carter right now," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper, "and get me a direct line to the Global Defense Council." Jake frowned but began making the calls. Admiral Frank Carter was the head of Earth's newly formed Space Defense Command, a gruff man in his 60s who had spent 40 years in the Navy before taking on the challenge of protecting humanity from unknown threats among the stars. The Global Defense Council was an even newer organization, formed just 6 months ago when Earth realized they were not alone in the universe. Within 30 minutes, the Luna Station's main conference room filled with holographic projections of Earth's most important military and political leaders. Admiral Carter's weathered face appeared first, followed by General Patricia Stone from the Army Space Division and Dr. Helen Moore, Earth's top expert on alien technology. Lisa stood at the front of the room, her tablet in her hands as she prepared to deliver news that would change everything. She took a deep breath and activated the main display, showing the translated message in simple English text. "To any who receive this transmission, we are the Zephyrian Alliance," Lisa read aloud. "We represent 7 peaceful species across 12 star systems. We have no warriors, no weapons of war. We are scholars, artists, and peaceful traders who have lived in harmony for thousands of years." The room remained silent as Lisa continued reading. "The Void Hunters have come to our region of space. They are mechanical beings who travel in vast fleets, harvesting entire planets for resources and enslaving any populations they find useful. They have already destroyed 3 of our systems completely. Our people had no weapons to fight them, no knowledge of warfare beyond ancient history texts." Admiral Carter leaned forward in his chair, his gray eyes growing hard as steel. He had spent his entire career preparing for threats, but this was beyond anything Earth had ever faced. Lisa's voice grew softer as she read the final part of the message. "We are sending this transmission to every star system we know, hoping someone will hear our plea. The Void Hunters show no mercy and accept no surrender. They simply take what they want and destroy everything else. We offer our knowledge, our art, our very souls to anyone who can help us. Please, if there is mercy in this galaxy, answer our call." The message included detailed star charts showing the location of the Zephyrian systems and tactical data about the Void Hunter fleet. The numbers were staggering. The enemy had over 200 large ships, each one bigger than anything Earth had ever built. Their technology seemed centuries ahead of human capabilities. General Stone was the first to speak after a long silence. "How long ago was this message sent?" Lisa checked her calculations. Based on the signal degradation in distance approximately 6 weeks ago, if the Void Hunters are moving at the speeds indicated in the tactical data, they probably have 2 or 3 weeks before the remaining Zephyrian systems are attacked. Dr. Moore studied the technical specifications of the Void Hunter ships. These beings are clearly more advanced than us. Their smallest ships are armed with weapons that could destroy our largest cities. Their fleet could probably wipe out Earth's entire space navy in a matter of hours. Admiral Carter stood up slowly, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the star charts. The old sailor had faced impossible odds before, but never anything like this. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 years ago, and their space fleet consisted of 12 ships designed for exploration, not warfare. What do we know about the Void Hunters themselves? Carter asked. Lisa pulled up additional data from the Zephyrian transmission. According to this, they are artificial intelligences housed in mechanical bodies. They consume organic matter for energy and raw materials. They have been moving through this region of space for decades, destroying civilizations that cannot defend themselves. The room fell silent again as everyone absorbed the implications. Earth was being asked to fight an enemy that had destroyed multiple star systems, using a fleet that barely qualified as a military force. Captain Rita Hayes, who commanded Earth's newest exploration vessel, finally spoke up from her position at the back of the room. Admiral, with all due respect, we cannot ignore this. If these Void Hunters finish with the Zephyrians, they will eventually find Earth. Better to fight them now while we have allies than wait for them to come to us? Admiral Carter nodded slowly. The captain was right, but the odds were terrible. Earth had never fought an interstellar war, had never even fought in space beyond. Small skirmishes with pirates in the outer system. Lisa, can you send a response to this transmission? Carter asked. Lisa nodded. Yes, sir, but it will take time to reach them. Carter looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. In their eyes, he saw the same mixture of fear and determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. They were scared, but they were not backing down. Send this message, Carter said firmly. Tell the Zephyrian Alliance that Earth has received their transmission. Tell them that humanity is coming to help, and that the Void Hunters are about to learn what happens when they threaten the innocent. As Lisa began composing the response, Jake Morrison looked out through the observation window at the blue marble of Earth hanging in space. In a few weeks, ships carrying human warriors would leave this peaceful world and travel to distant stars to fight an enemy they had never seen. He wondered if any of them would ever come home. Colonel Danny Rodriguez stood in the massive hangar bay of the orbital shipyard above Earth, watching as workers swarmed over the hull of the battleship Vengeance. Sparks flew from welding torches as technicians installed weapon systems that had been designed in laboratories just weeks ago. The ship had originally been built for exploration and peaceful contact with alien civilizations, but now it was being transformed into something much more dangerous. Dr. Susan Clark walked up. Beside him, her tablet displaying psychological profiles of the Marines who would soon board these ships. As Earth's leading expert on combat stress and military psychology, she had been tasked with preparing human warriors for battles unlike anything in their history. The weapons teams finished installing the kinetic bombardment system this morning, Danny said, pointing to the massive railguns being mounted along the ship's spine. Each one can accelerate a tungsten rod to 15% of light speed. The impact force would crack a small moon. Susan nodded but kept her attention on her tablet. What worries me more is how our people will react to fighting mechanical enemies. Humans are evolved to fight other humans, other living things. These Void Hunters are artificial intelligences in robot bodies. Our soldiers might hesitate when they should be pulling triggers. Danny turned to look at her, his dark eyes serious. Doc, you have not spent enough time with Marines. We adapt. If something is trying to kill us or hurt innocent people, we kill it back. Does not matter if it is made of flesh or metal. The hangar doors opened and Major Alex Turner led his battalion of Marines through their final training exercise. These men and women wore the latest combat armor, powered exoskeletons that multiplied their strength and speed while protecting them from the vacuum of space. They moved through mock ship corridors, practicing the boarding actions they would need to master in the coming weeks. Susan watched as the Marines executed their training with brutal efficiency. They moved like predators, using every advantage their human bodies gave them. Speed, flexibility, and most importantly, the ability to think creatively under pressure. Earth's military leaders had realized something important during the preparation phase. While the Void Hunters had superior technology, they were still machines following programmed behaviors. Humans were chaos incarnate. "Look at how they solve problems," Danny said, pointing to a group of Marines who had encountered a locked door in their training scenario. Instead of trying to hack the electronic lock, they simply blew a hole in the wall next to it and climbed through. Machines think in straight lines. Humans think in curves and spirals and sometimes just blow things up until they work. Commander Beth Palmer entered the hangar carrying a datapad filled with tactical plans. She had spent the last month studying every piece of information Zephyrians had provided about Void Hunter fighting methods. What she discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. "The Void Hunters have never faced serious resistance," Beth reported to Danny and Susan. "They attack civilized species who try to negotiate or surrender when overwhelmed. According to the Zephyrian data, most species they encounter try to reason with them or offer tribute in exchange for mercy." Danny grunted in amusement. "They have never met humans then. We do not negotiate with predators. We kill them and mount their heads on walls." Beth smiled grimly. "That is exactly what I was thinking. The Void Hunters use overwhelming force because it has always worked. They send their largest ships first, expecting immediate surrender, but their tactics assume the enemy will behave rationally." Susan looked up from her tablet. "Define rationally." "Preserve their own lives above all else," Beth explained. "Retreat when faced with superior numbers. Surrender when defeat becomes inevitable. Protect their leaders and important resources instead of throwing everything into battle." Danny and Susan exchanged glances. They both understood immediately why this was significant. "Humans do not fight rationally," Susan said slowly. "We have been known to charge machine gun nests with nothing but knives. We fly aircraft into enemy ships when we run out of ammunition. We hold positions until we die rather than give ground to an enemy." Major Turner finished his training exercise and approached the group. Sweat covered his face, but his eyes were bright with excitement. His Marines had just completed a boarding simulation where they were outnumbered 5-1 by mechanical defenders. They had won by using tactics no computer would ever program. "How did the exercise go?" Danny asked. Alex grinned. "We lost 12 Marines in the simulation, but we took the ship. The computer kept expecting us to retreat when casualties mounted, but we just kept pushing forward. Machines calculate acceptable losses. Humans ignore losses when the mission matters more than survival." The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the ship's communication system. Admiral Carter was about to address all personnel preparing for the mission to Zephyrian space. Screens throughout the hangar activated, showing the Admiral's weathered face. "People of Earth," Carter began, his voice carrying the weight of command, "earned through decades of service. In 72 hours, we will depart for the Kepler 442 system to engage an enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations. The Void Hunters believe that superior technology guarantees victory. They are about to learn the difference between intelligence and wisdom." Carter paused, looking directly into the camera. "Earth is what galactic civilization classifies as a Class 12 death world. That means our planet tries to kill us every single day. Storms that would shatter alien cities are Tuesday weather for us. Animals that would terrorize other species are our household pets. Diseases that would destroy other civilizations are minor inconveniences we cure with simple medicines." The Admiral's expression grew harder. "We evolved on a world where everything is trying to eat us, burn us, freeze us, poison us, or crush us. We survived by becoming the most successful predators in our planet's history. We are not just warriors. We are apex predators with nuclear weapons and faster-than-light spaceships. Throughout the hangar, Marines and technicians listened with growing confidence. They had trained for this mission knowing they were outgunned and outnumbered, but now they understood something crucial. The Void Hunters might have better technology, but they had never faced anything like humanity. The Zephyrians and their allies are peaceful beings who create art and explore the universe with wonder, Carter continued. They called for help because they have no concept of warfare beyond ancient history. They expected to die fighting hopelessly against superior numbers. They did not expect Deathworlders to answer their call. Danny looked around the hangar at his Marines. These men and women had volunteered for a mission that would probably kill most of them, but every single face showed determination instead of fear. They understood what was at stake, and they were ready to pay any price necessary. In 3 days, we will show the Void Hunters what happens when predators hunt other predators, Carter concluded. We will demonstrate that technology cannot replace the will to fight, the creativity of desperation, and the fury of a species that refuses to yield to superior numbers. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors. We go not for glory, but for justice. We go to save the innocent and destroy those who prey upon them. The transmission ended, leaving the hangar in thoughtful silence. Susan looked at her psychological profiles again and realized she had been approaching the problem wrong. She had been worried about how humans would adapt to fighting machines, but the real question was how machines would adapt to fighting humans. Danny, she said quietly, I think the Void Hunters are about to face their first real predator. Colonel Rodriguez nodded as he watched his Marines preparing their weapons. Doc, these mechanical bastards have been hunting sheep for so long they forgot that wolves exist. They are about to get a very unpleasant reminder. The final preparations continued through the night as Earth's first interstellar war fleet prepared to depart. In 72 hours, human warriors would carry 10,000 years of evolutionary violence to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, like wolves emerging from a dark forest. Captain Ron Blake stood on the bridge of his destroyer, watching as the tactical display populated with contacts. Dozens of massive Void Hunter ships surrounded the blue-green world that served as the Zephyrian homeworld, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack continents. Ambassador Veltar watched the battle from his crystalline tower on the planet's surface. His people gathered around communication arrays that had been tracking the approaching human fleet for the past 6 hours. The Zephyrians had expected their rescuers to announce themselves, to demand negotiations, or at least to assess the situation before acting. Instead, the human ships had arrived and immediately begun moving toward the Void Hunter fleet without any attempt at communication. Ron studied the enemy formation through his ship's sensors. The Void Hunters had positioned their largest vessels in a defensive sphere around the planet, with smaller ships patrolling the outer system. It was a textbook formation designed to repel frontal attacks and prevent escape. Unfortunately for the mechanical beings, humans had learned long ago that textbooks were suggestions, not rules. All ships, this is Blake, Ron transmitted to the human fleet. Execute Protocol Volfpack. Use the asteroid belt for cover and remember that these machines think in patterns. Be unpredictable. The 12 human ships scattered like startled birds, diving toward the system's dense asteroid field that orbited between the second and third planets. The Void Hunters immediately began pursuit, their formation breaking apart as individual ships moved to intercept what appeared to be a panicked retreat. Commander Nancy Davis piloted her cruiser through the spinning rocks with precision that would have impressed any pilot in human space. Behind her, Void Hunter ships followed in single file, their artificial intelligence calculating safe paths through the debris field. What they failed to calculate was that humans had been flying through dangerous terrain since they first learned to build aircraft. Contact in 30 seconds, Nancy announced to her boarding teams. Marines, prepare for aggressive docking procedures. In the ship's boarding bay, Sergeant Pete Johnson checked his weapon one final time. The plasma rifle was heavier than traditional human firearms, but it could punch through the armor plating that protected Void Hunter mechanical bodies. Around him, 20 other Marines made similar preparations, their faces grim with concentration. The Void Hunter ship emerged from behind a large asteroid, its weapons already charging for what should have been an easy kill. Instead, Nancy's cruiser spun around the rock and slammed into the enemy vessel's side at ramming speed. The impact tore through both hulls, creating a bridge of twisted metal that the Marines used as their highway into enemy territory. Pete led the first boarding team. Through the breach, his rifle spitting plasma bolts that turned mechanical defenders into molten scrap. The Void Hunters had expected human ships to maintain safe distances and engage in long-range combat. They had not prepared for enemies who treated their own ships as disposable weapons and personal safety as an optional consideration. On the planet below, Ambassador Veltar watched his communication displays with growing amazement and horror. The human tactical frequencies crackled with reports that defied everything the Zephyrians understood about civilized warfare. "Boarding Team 7 has secured the engine room," came one transmission. "Sergeant Williams lost his left arm but is still operational and requesting permission to set demolition charges." Another voice followed immediately. "This is Marine Johnson. My weapon is destroyed, but I have acquired enemy plasma cutter, using it to dismantle Void Hunter defenders from the inside out. These machines are not as tough as they look." Veltar's crystalline form shimmered with confusion. The human spoke of severe injuries and equipment failures as minor inconveniences. When Zephyrian soldiers were wounded, they retreated for medical attention. When their weapons failed, they surrendered. But these human warriors seemed to become more dangerous when damaged. Captain Blake's destroyer emerged from the asteroid field trailing smoke and debris, but its weapons were still firing. 3 Void Hunter ships pursued him, their formation tight and precise as they closed for the kill. Blake waited until the last possible moment before executing a maneuver that violated several laws of physics and common sense. The destroyer flipped end over end while maintaining forward momentum, bringing its main guns to bear on the surprised Void Hunters. At point-blank range, the kinetic projectiles punched through enemy shields and armor like bullets through paper. 2 Void Hunter ships exploded instantly, while the third spun away with massive hull breaches. Commander Kyle Watson watched the battle from his command ship and realized the moment had come to implement humanity's most terrifying military doctrine. Protocol Savage was designed for situations where conventional tactics would fail, where the enemy possessed overwhelming advantages in numbers and technology. It was based on a simple principle that only apex predators truly understood. "All ships, this is Watson," he transmitted. "Execute Protocol Savage. Weapons free, safety protocols disabled. Show these machines what Deathworlders do when cornered." The human fleet's behavior changed instantly from organized chaos to pure predatory instinct. Ships that had been maneuvering defensively suddenly accelerated toward the largest Void Hunter. Vessels with suicidal determination. Human captains who had been conserving ammunition began firing everything they had, including experimental weapons that might destroy their own ships. Lieutenant Sarah Murphy piloted her fighter directly into the hangar bay of a Void Hunter dreadnought, ejecting at the last second as her ship's nuclear reactor overloaded. The explosion gutted the massive vessel from the inside, leaving it dead in space. Sarah's escape pod was recovered 20 minutes later by a Marine transport, and her first words were a request for another fighter so she could do it again. The Void Hunter fleet, which had been designed to face civilized opponents who valued their own survival, began to show signs of confusion and disorganization. Their artificial intelligences had been programmed with thousands of tactical scenarios, but none of them included enemies who fought with the desperate creativity of cornered animals. Sergeant Johnson's boarding team had fought their way to the command center of their target ship, leaving a trail of destroyed mechanical defenders in their wake. Pete himself was operating on adrenaline and pain medication, his severed arm replaced by a mechanical grabber he had torn from a disabled Void Hunter. He used the device to hold grenades while his remaining hand operated his weapon. Command. Center secured, Pete reported, his voice steady despite blood loss that should have killed him. Uploading captured data files and preparing demolition charges. Recommend all human ships maintain safe distance in 60 seconds. The Void Hunter. Ship exploded in a ball of plasma and debris, taking with it the mechanical defenders who had retreated to protect their command systems. Pete and his Marines had fought through 14 decks of enemy territory, suffering casualties that would have broken most civilized armies, but completing their mission with ruthless efficiency. On the planet below, Ambassador Veltar received his first direct communication from the human fleet. Commander Watson's face appeared on the main display, his features calm despite the chaos of battle raging around his ship. Ambassador Veltar, this is Commander Watson of the Earth Defense Fleet, the human said simply. We received your call for help. The Void Hunter threat to your world will be eliminated within the next 4 hours. Please maintain safe distance. From orbital combat zones? Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with gratitude and amazement. Commander Watson, we cannot express our appreciation for your assistance. However, our sensors indicate that your forces are outnumbered 3-1. Perhaps negotiation with the Void Hunters might be possible. Watson's expression did not change, but something cold flickered in his human eyes. Ambassador, humans, do not negotiate with predators, we eliminate them. Please stand by for tactical updates. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar to contemplate the terrifying efficiency of his rescuers. The Zephyrians had called for help, expecting to find allies who might die gloriously in a hopeless cause. Instead, they had summoned apex predators, who treated overwhelming odds as target-rich environments. The battle continued to rage in the space above the Zephyrian homeworld, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Void Hunter fleet was learning the difference between hunting defenseless prey and facing predators, who had evolved specifically to kill anything that threatened them. Humanity had answered the call for aid, and the galaxy would never underestimate Deathworlders again. The surviving Void Hunter ships fled from the Kepler 442 system like wounded animals, their formation shattered and their artificial intelligence system struggling to process what had just happened. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered prey that fought back with such vicious effectiveness that retreat became the only logical option. Admiral Frank Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the enemy withdrawal on tactical displays that showed dozens of disabled Void Hunter vessels drifting in space. Lieutenant Colonel Gary Stone approached the Admiral with a data pad containing captured intelligence from the destroyed enemy ships. His Marines had downloaded terabytes of information during their boarding actions, including star charts that showed the location of Void Hunter bases throughout the region. Admiral, we have a problem, Gary said, his voice grim. According to this data, the fleet we just defeated was only a scouting force. The main Void Hunter armada contains over 500 ships, and they are regrouping at a mobile command base 3 systems away. Carter studied the intelligence reports with the calculating mind of a career military officer. The logical decision would be to return to Earth, report the successful rescue of the Zephyrians, and prepare defenses for the inevitable Void Hunter retaliation. But Admiral Carter had not become the leader of Earth's space forces by making logical decisions when aggressive ones would work better. Colonel Stone, what is the current status of our fleet? Carter asked. Gary checked his reports. 7 ships operational with minor damage, 3 ships heavily damaged but still combat capable, 2 ships destroyed. Marine casualties are at 30%, but morale is extremely high. The men are asking when we attack the Void Hunter main base. Carter smiled grimly. The Marines wanted to pursue a retreating enemy into their own territory, despite being outnumbered by more than 40-1. It was exactly the kind of insane courage that made humans dangerous throughout their evolutionary history, Captain. Tim Foster entered the bridge carrying additional intelligence reports from the captured Void Hunter computers. His technical teams had been working around the clock to decrypt enemy databases and understand their technology. What they discovered changed everything about the nature of the conflict. Admiral, you need to see this, Tim said, activating a holographic display that showed the history of Void Hunter expansion across the galaxy. These machines are not just raiders or conquerors. They are a form of artificial intelligence that consumed their own creators millions of years ago. Since then, they have been systematically hunting down and harvesting every organic civilization they encounter. The display showed dozens of star systems that had once supported thriving civilizations, now reduced to empty space filled with mechanical ships that stripped entire worlds for raw materials. The Void Hunters viewed organic life as inefficient and worthy only of conversion into useful resources. How many civilizations have they destroyed? Carter asked. Tim checked his data. Based on the records we captured, at least 200 major civilizations over the past million years. They do not negotiate, they do not show mercy, and they do not stop hunting until every organic being in a region is dead or enslaved. Dr. Helen Moore, who had been analyzing Void Hunter technology, stepped forward with her own disturbing findings. Admiral, these machines have been growing stronger with each civilization they destroy. They incorporate the best technology from their victims and use the organic populations as slave labor until they are no longer useful. Carter processed this information with the cold calculation of a military strategist. The Void Hunters were not just an enemy to be defeated in battle. They were a cancer that would continue spreading through the galaxy until someone stopped them permanently. Gentlemen, we have a choice, Carter announced to his senior staff. We can return to Earth and wait for these machines to eventually find us, or we can finish what we started here. These Void Hunters have been hunting defenseless civilizations for millennia. It is time they learned what happens when they encounter real predators. Lieutenant Colonel Stone grinned fiercely. Admiral, my Marines would follow you into hell itself if you asked them to. Pursuing a bunch of machines into their home territory. Sounds like a vacation compared to some of the training exercises we run on Earth. The decision was made with the swift efficiency that characterized human military planning. Instead of retreating to safety, the Earth Defense Fleet would pursue the Void Hunters to their command base and eliminate the threat at its source. It was a strategy that would have seemed insane to any civilized species, but humans had built their entire civilization on the principle that the best defense was overwhelming offense. Captain Foster worked with captured Void Hunter navigation data to plot a course to the enemy command base. Admiral, the Void Hunter stronghold is located in an asteroid field in the Vega system. According to their own records, it contains manufacturing facilities, processing plants for organic materials, and housing for approximately 50,000 enslaved beings from various species. Carter's expression hardened. The thought of 50,000 innocent beings suffering in Void Hunter slave camps eliminated any remaining doubt about the necessity of their mission. Humanity had answered the Zephyrian call for help, but now they were fighting for something larger than one star system. The human fleet entered hyperspace 12 hours later, carrying with them captured Void Hunter technology that Dr. Moore's teams had reverse-engineered and improved. Human scientists had a disturbing talent for taking enemy weapons and making them more efficient, more deadly, and significantly more dangerous to operate. Commander Nancy Davis stood in the modified hangar bay of her cruiser, watching as Marines practiced with captured Void Hunter plasma weapons. The human engineers had increased the power output by 40%, and reduced the safety mechanisms to almost nothing. The weapons were now powerful enough to cut through heavy armor plating, but they also had a tendency to explode if handled carelessly. Are you sure these modifications are safe? Nancy asked the chief engineer, Sergeant Pete Johnson, who had returned to duty despite losing his arm in the previous battle, overheard the question and laughed. Commander, we are about to assault a space station defended by hundreds of mechanical killers using weapons that might blow up in our faces. Safe went out the window when we volunteered for this mission. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vega system and immediately began moving toward the asteroid field, where the Void Hunter command base was hidden. Long-range sensors showed the massive artificial construct built into the largest asteroid its surface bristling with defensive weapons and docking facilities for the enemy fleet. Admiral Carter studied the tactical situation with the experienced eye of a predator evaluating prey. The Void Hunter base was heavily defended and positioned in terrain that would make conventional assault nearly impossible. Fortunately, humans specialized in impossible military operations. "All ships prepare for Operation Extermination," Carter announced. "We will demonstrate to these machines that predators do not retreat to safe distances when hunting. We close with the enemy and destroy them in their own nest." The Void Hunter defense fleet moved to intercept the approaching human ships, their artificial intelligence systems confident that 12 small vessels could not threaten a base that had withstood attacks from dozens of civilizations. They had calculated human capabilities based on conventional military doctrine and found them insufficient. What the Void Hunters had not calculated was that human military doctrine was based on controlled insanity. As the enemy fleet approached, the human ships scattered and began using tactics that violated every principle of space combat that civilized species had developed over thousands of years. Captain Blake's destroyer accelerated directly toward the largest Void Hunter battleship, its nuclear reactor pushed far beyond safe operating parameters. At the last possible moment, he ejected the reactor core and used it as an improvised nuclear torpedo. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it also created a gap in the Void Hunter formation that allowed Marine assault ships to penetrate their defensive line. Lieutenant Colonel Stone led the boarding assault on the command base itself, his Marines using captured Void Hunter technology to cut through the station's outer hull. What they found inside was a nightmare of enslaved organic beings forced to work in manufacturing facilities that produced more Void Hunter ships and weapons. The rescue operation became a slaughter as human Marines encountered the full extent of Void Hunter cruelty. Beings from dozens of species had been reduced to mindless slaves, their bodies modified with mechanical implants that forced them to serve their captors. Some had been prisoners for decades, others for centuries. Gary Stone stood in the main processing facility, watching as his Marines destroyed the mechanical overseers who had tortured innocent beings for their entire existence. The sight of organic people reduced to components in a machine filled him with a rage that made tactical thinking difficult. "All Marines, this is Stone," he transmitted. "No prisoners, no quarter, no mercy. These machines have forfeited any right to exist. Hunt them down and destroy every last one of them." The battle for the Void Hunter command base lasted 18. The rescue ships from 17 different civilizations arrived at the former Void Hunter command base 6 weeks after the human assault, expecting to find debris fields and maybe some survivors hiding in the asteroid field. Instead, they discovered something that would change galactic civilization forever. The humans had not just defeated the Void Hunters. They had systematically hunted down and destroyed every trace of the mechanical plague that had terrorized organic life for millions of years. Ambassador Veltar led the joint investigation team that boarded the human flagship to meet with Admiral Carter. The crystalline being had never seen anything like the organized efficiency with which humans had eliminated a threat that had seemed unstoppable. Every Void Hunter facility in 3 star systems had been reduced to molecular debris, and the freed slaves were receiving medical treatment that was somehow more advanced than anything the peaceful civilizations possessed. Dr. Susan Clark stood in the medical bay of the human hospital ship, watching as former Void Hunter slaves slowly regained their capacity for independent thought. Beings from dozens of species lay in recovery beds, their mechanical implants removed by human surgeons who worked with a precision that amazed alien medical personnel. "How is this possible?" asked Dr. Zenfai, a 6-limbed healer from the Proxima Collective. "Our best physicians said that removing these implants would kill the patients. But your people have saved everyone we brought you." Susan smiled tiredly. "Dr. Zenfai, humans have been removing foreign objects from bodies for thousands of years. We call it surgery, and we have gotten very good at it because our planet keeps trying to put things inside us that do not belong there. Parasites, toxins, shrapnel from explosions. We learned to cut them out and keep the patient alive. In the recovery ward, former slave Calither from the Andorian Empire spoke his first free words in 37 years. The blue-skinned humanoid had been captured as a child and forced to work in Void Hunter manufacturing facilities until the human assault freed him. Marine Corporal Lisa Wright sat beside his bed, translating his story for the medical team. He says the Void Hunters would punish any slave who showed independence by increasing the pain signals from their control implants, Lisa reported. But during the assault, he saw human Marines fighting with injuries that should have disabled them. He realized that if humans could ignore pain to help others, maybe he could ignore pain to help himself. Dr. Clark nodded, understanding the psychological breakthrough that had allowed Calither to begin resisting his programming even before the implants were removed. Humans had inadvertently taught the slaves that pain was just another obstacle to overcome, not an absolute barrier to action. Admiral Carter stood in the main conference room of his flagship, addressing representatives from 43 different civilizations, who had come to thank humanity for eliminating the Void Hunter threat. The gathering included species that had never spoken to each other before, united by their gratitude to the Deathworlders who had saved them from extinction. Admiral Carter, spoke Elder Mothrai of the Silicon Collective, our species has existed for 12 million years, and in all that time, we have never seen anything like what your people accomplished. You fought an enemy that had superior numbers, superior technology, and superior defensive positions. Yet you achieved total victory with minimal losses. How is this possible? Carter looked around the room at the assembled aliens, all of them peaceful beings who had evolved in regions of space where cooperation and negotiation solved most problems. They genuinely could not understand how humans had succeeded where their own civilizations would have failed. Elder Mothrai, the answer is simple but not pleasant, Carter replied. Earth is what you call a Class 12 death world. Every day of our existence is a battle for survival against a planet that actively tries to kill us. We did not choose to become warriors. We became warriors because anything else would have meant extinction, Ambassador Veltar shimmered with curiosity. Admiral, your people fought with injuries that would have incapacitated any of our warriors. They used weapons that were as dangerous to themselves as to the enemy. They pursued retreating enemies instead of celebrating victory. These behaviors seem to contradict basic survival instincts, Carter smiled grimly. Ambassador, you are thinking about survival the way peaceful species do. You try to preserve individual lives and avoid unnecessary risks. Humans think about survival differently. We preserve the group by sacrificing individuals when necessary. We take risks that seem insane, because the alternative is usually worse. Dr. Helen Moore entered the conference room carrying data pads filled with analysis of captured Void Hunter technology. Her engineering teams had spent weeks studying the mechanical being's systems, and what they discovered was both fascinating and disturbing. Admiral, we have completed our analysis of Void Hunter technology, Helen reported. These machines had the capability to destroy entire star systems, but they had one critical weakness. They were programmed to fight civilized opponents who follow predictable patterns of behavior. She activated a holographic display showing Void Hunter tactical algorithms. Their artificial intelligence systems were designed to counter conventional military strategies, formation fighting, defensive positions, strategic retreats, negotiated surrenders. They had responses programmed for every tactic that rational beings would use. But they had no responses for irrational tactics, Carter concluded. No programming for enemies who ram ships into larger vessels, who fight harder when wounded, who pursue retreating forces into defended positions. Helen nodded. Exactly. The Void Hunters had never encountered a species that treats its own safety as secondary to mission completion. They could not predict human behavior because human behavior is fundamentally chaotic when compared to other galactic civilizations. The conference was interrupted by an urgent communication from Captain Tim Foster, who had been leading cleanup operations in the outer system. His face appeared on the main display, excitement evident in his expression. Admiral, we have found something you need to see immediately, Tim reported. We discovered a Void Hunter data archive that contains information about every civilization they have encountered over the past million years. The database includes detailed records of their expansion patterns and future target lists. Carter frowned. "What did you find, Captain?" Tim's expression grew grim. "Sir, according to their records, the Void Hunters were preparing to expand into our region of the galaxy within the next 50 years. Earth was on their target list, along with every other inhabited system within 200 light-years of our position." The alien representatives in the conference room began speaking in excited whispers as they realized the implications. The humans had not just responded to a call for help. They had eliminated a threat that would have eventually destroyed every civilization in their region of space. "There is more, Admiral," Tim continued. "The archive contains the locations of 17 other Void Hunter fleets operating in distant regions of the galaxy. Each fleet is similar in size to the one we just destroyed. They are currently hunting civilizations that have no idea the threat exists." Elder Mothrai spoke for the assembled representatives. Admiral Carter, on behalf of all our civilizations, we formally request that humanity consider extending protection to other regions of the galaxy. We understand this would require significant resources and risk to your people. Carter looked around the room at the faces of beings whose civilizations had just learned they were not alone in facing existential threats. These peaceful species had no concept of interstellar warfare, no understanding of the tactics needed to hunt predators across multiple star systems. "Elder Mothrai, humanity will consider your request," Carter replied carefully. "But you must understand what you are asking. We are not peacekeepers or diplomats. We are predators who have learned to hunt other predators. If we accept this responsibility, we will eliminate threats with the same efficiency we used against the Void Hunters." Ambassador Veltar pulsed with understanding. "Admiral, our civilizations have learned something important about the nature of protection. Sometimes salvation comes with claws and teeth attached. We would rather live under the protection of honorable predators than die at the hands of dishonorable ones." 3 months later, the Terran Defense Compact was established with Earth as the primary military power and 47 peaceful civilizations as protected members. Human ships began patrolling trade routes and establishing defense stations in systems that had never needed military protection before. The galaxy learned that when Deathworlders answered a call for aid, they did not just drive away immediate threats. They hunted down the source of those threats and eliminated them so completely that other predators learned to avoid the protected territories entirely. Deep space monitoring stations throughout human protected space began broadcasting the same message to potential threats. "This system is under Terran protection. Hostile forces are advised that humans hunt hunters, and they have developed a taste for the work. The Zephyrians and their allies were safe, but the galaxy had learned that salvation sometimes required accepting guardians who were more dangerous than the threats they faced. Humanity had found its place